Welcome back to React Native Radio Podcast. Brought to you by Idiocracy, an uplifting award-submitted documentary. Episode 319, Shopify goes full throttle on React Native.
Hello, everybody. I'm Robin, and this is Mazen.
Hello.
Hello, Mazen.
Hey, Robin.
How are you?
Good. Can't complain.
Good. Can't complain. You probably could, but you're just not going to.
Yeah, not now. Maybe when we're done.
We also have a guest with us. Mustafa Ali is here. Can you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, hi. Mustafa. I'm a director of engineering at Shopify, and I lead the team that builds the Shopify mobile app and also mobile foundations and mobile application security for all of Shopify's mobile apps.
Awesome. And if you live under a rock and you don't know what Shopify is...
Shopify is a commerce platform that allows people to sell online, in person, or anywhere in between. We allow merchants of all sizes to sell their products both online, on social media, or anywhere else for that matter. And yeah, a lot of merchants around the world use our platform.
So most of like the small businesses that you've bought something from that all seem to look and feel really familiar, that's probably because they're built on Shopify.
And big ones too. So,
yeah.
And big ones.
Yeah, small and big.
Steve Madden.
Yeah, you probably used Shopify in the last couple of days, I'm guessing.
As you're checking out, if you check out and you see that shop checkout page, that's Shopify, just a different. We spoke to, didn't we have Colin Gray on to speak about the shop side of things?
We did, yeah.
So this is full circle now. Now this
we'll link
part.
Colin's episode in the show notes.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're good friends with Shopify. But so really excited to have you on. Before we launch into our topic, which I'm really excited about, we do have to hear from our sponsor. So Infinite Red is a premier React Native consultancy located fully remote in the US. We're a team of 30 senior plus level React Native developers and support staff and have been doing this for nearly a decade. If you're looking for React Native expertise for your next project, hit us up at infinite.red/radio. And don't forget to mention that you heard about us through the React Native Radio podcast. As always, it makes our day. So let's get into our topic, which is, of course, Shopify and their transition to React Native. I think our official title is Shopify Goes Full Throttle on React Native, which I personally like as a motor racing fan. But yes, you guys recently rebuilt your app in React Native, and you're going to tell us about it. To start off, the question I think everyone always wants to know is, how did you come to the decision to rewrite your entire app in React Native? Because that's a huge undertaking. So how did that decision come to be?
Yeah, so 5 years ago, we decided to go all in on React Native. That decision, there were three main reasons for that. First, we wanted to stop building the same features twice. We were spending a lot of time building the same thing on iOS and Android, and it was a huge drag on our productivity. So we want to stop doing that. The second one was we wanted to allow our engineers to work seamlessly across iOS, Android, and web. It was very hard for web devs, for instance, to contribute to mobile because the learning curve of it was very steep. Mm-hmm. And finally, we wanted to spend less time chasing feature parity and more time shipping value to our users. So anybody who's built an app knows that it's very hard, even though you might have two teams working in parallel, building the same app on two platforms. It's very difficult to keep them in sync. Mm-hmm. A lot of times things get shipped first on iOS, then Android has to constantly play catch up, or even if you have the same feature, they're slightly different. So then you have to spend the time to catch those issues and fix them. We wanted to stop doing that. So in 2020, we made the announcement that we're going to go all in on React Native, and we started migrating all our apps from that point onwards. We also built some new apps in the last 5 years, so those were built from scratch. Recently, we finished migrating our biggest and the last remaining app, which is the Shopify mobile app, to React Native. And that app was very large, over 800 screens, was built over a decade. So we kept the biggest app for the end.
Did you find that the approach of saving your biggest app for last was effective?
It did, but it wasn't like the primary motivation to do it in this sequence. When we decided to move to React Native, we wanted all teams to decide when and how they migrated. So some apps were in the process of being rewritten because we were doing a massive UX overhaul. Some apps we were just starting to build them. Some apps were really small, so we were able to migrate them much faster. So some teams decided to do a full rewrite. In this particular case, we couldn't do a rewrite because it would have taken forever and we wouldn't have been able to ship any new features while the rewrite was in progress. So that's why we decided to tackle in a slightly different way.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Going like back in the beginning, like when you first made the decision, was there any like convincing that you had to do? Was there stakeholders that were skeptical? Like, what sort of arguments did you have to make? Or was it pretty much a slam dunk with like, this is how much time we'll save building features?
The process started several years ago. So we evaluated React Native several times over the years, and we did a lot of prototyping. And until 2020, we decided to not go ahead with React Native because it had a bunch of rough edges. In 2020, when we did the prototyping again, we found that it was much, much more suitable for our use case and at our scale. And yes, it had a few rough edges, but we felt confident enough that those edges could be smoothened out by Meta, by the community, and also we can help fix them as well. So that's when we decided to go all in. Changes like these are difficult to do, and a lot of people, especially native mobile devs, I've done native for a very long time, and one of my favorite things about native development is that how passionate people are about native iOS and Android, how everybody cares very deeply about their craft. People obsess over the details and the UX, and a lot of people have built very deep expertise in native technology. So to drop all that and shift to this completely new stack, new language, new framework, a lot of new things that you have to learn is difficult. And we understand that. So the main thing that we did internally was encourage everybody to try React Native out. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, especially when you talk about React Native or any other tool like this online, people have very strong opinions. And a lot of those strong opinions
That's true.
are not backed by any like real work that they themselves have done. It's mostly like they've heard somebody say that this is good or not good, and then you basically just make up their mind. So what we encourage everybody to do is just try it out, take it for a spin, see what works and what doesn't, and then we can figure out like what we should do. So a lot of people did prototyping internally, and then a lot of people liked it. Some people needed a little more convincing, so we have them do more prototyping and work with people who already knew how to do React Native so that they could help them. Very few people decided to not do React Native, but that was fine too. And we found other roles for them at the company, and they are doing different things. That some people move to the web, some people move to the backend, and that's working out well. A lot more people actually from the web wanted to do React Native and mobile finally, and it was finally possible for them. So they ended up switching over and are now working on our mobile apps.
That's amazing. It's all over the map in our experience. Like whether you have a ton of pushback from native engineers who are being asked to switch, or whether they kind of embrace it, and it makes a huge difference, like what the culture is and like what leadership is making the culture basically. And I love that you sort of let them have ownership and get to know React Native on their own, and it wasn't this like edict from above, like you have to do this or else. Were there any like challenges going forward with like cultural differences between like native engineers and then your web or your JavaScript engineers? Like were the native engineers like more strict about type safety or things like that? Did you have to sort of mesh these engineering cultures at all?
Not as drastic as you would imagine. At the end of the day, everybody wants to ship high quality code to production. And it's just that you need to understand what does that mean for native versus React Native. One of the things that we've learned over the last 5 years is that in order to build a really good mobile app with React Native, you need a good mix of both native and React Native engineers. You can't do it without having a good mix. A lot of people think you can just have a bunch of web devs do React Native and end up with a really good app. In our case, in our experience, that necessarily doesn't happen. You still have to do a lot of native development. You need native expertise, especially for tooling, and also for all the cases where React Native might not be the best tool for the job. So that's where native expertise comes in. And I think it's really, really crucial to have good native expertise on your team, even if you're doing React Native.
It's 100% true. And I think it really helps get buy-in from native engineers too, to really recognize that their expertise is extremely valuable and necessary.
There's a reason it's called React Native, right? The React devs bring in that React experience and help us with the React side of it. And the native devs help us with the native part of React Native. And having them on board and even just on your team is very crucial because, like you said, if something needs to happen on the native side, they can easily jump in, get it done, and you can kind of move forward with your feature. Now, on that same sentiment with your migration, what did you all do as far as, because 2-year period is a long time, right? I doubt you froze development on your Shopify app. Were you developing side by side? Did you try and play catch up in any situations? What was your migration timeline looking like because now essentially you're building 3 apps or maintaining 3 apps essentially.
So we did this in phases essentially. So step 1 was to introduce React Native to the code base, the existing Shopify mobile code base, and get all the tooling set up, CI, make sure that we could start using React Native inside the app. And then we started building we were building some new screens at the time, and we started building them with React Native just to get a sense of how it would work in the code base. Also the interop between native and React Native, we want to make sure that it works well. So first step was that. We also used that as a way for the team to start learning React Native because this team was purely native. I don't think anybody had done React Native at that point, so we started learning how to do it. But once we once we finished that, then we started training everybody on React Native. We could put together a training program that allowed everybody to basically learn everything they needed to do, learn to ship high quality code in React Native to production. And then we decided to migrate the home screen of the app to React Native. So in the Shopify mobile app, the home screen has 4 main tabs, and those screens get the maximum amount of traffic. So the idea was that if we can do a good job of building these screens in React Native and they work well, React Native will work at our scale for this particular app. So we migrated those 4 screens. Every time you opened the app, we were using React Native screens. So that was a big win for the team, and it also gave the team us a lot of confidence that, yes, we can build really good screens with React Native. Then we decided to migrate all the critical screens of the app to React Native. So these are the screens that are used by most of our users most of the time. So these are things that if something breaks in them, then it's an issue, it's an incident, you have to go fix them.
Yeah.
So we tackled one feature after another and migrate all of them to React Native. The next stage was migrating all the non-critical screens to React Native. So these are screens that are used by many of our users some of the time. So we migrated all the remaining screens. This was a much bigger number of screens. So we migrated all of them. And we could have stopped there, but we didn't, because we did not want to end up with a brownfield code base forever. So the last step was to move the foundational layer of the app to React Native. So things like identity, state management, networking, all of that, we also moved to the React Native and deleted a bunch of code along the way and then called the migration done.
Wow. That's a really interesting approach.
It almost sounds like Did you have specific training for your native developers in React Native? Or was it just, hey, we're going to start migrating, like you said, like almost feature by feature or, phases? And was it just, hey, as we get to the first feature, let's build it out together? What did that training look like to get those native devs on? Because that sounds like a very interesting way of handling it. And of course, sounds like it was a success. But what did the training look like to get to that first phase?
Yeah, so some people just started learning React Native on their own and became good at it. But when you have a large team, you can't really expect everybody to do that or expect that to finish in a reasonable amount of time. So we put together the self-serve training program where it started off with JavaScript, TypeScript, React Native, and how we use React Native at Shopify. And it was basically a self-serve course that you could go through in 40 hours roughly. You don't have to do it all at the same time. You could just break it into pieces. You can spend a few hours every day. And we had everybody go through that. And the idea was that if you just go through this 40 hours of training, you will know everything you need to ship code. And then what we did after that was we brought in also like some people who have done React Native in the past and also some web devs for their web expertise on the team, so that we had a good mix, like I was saying before. We organized office hours where people could come in and ask questions, share code, do pair programming, and get unblocked. So that way we shared the knowledge and we spread the knowledge across the team. And also the people who hadn't done native learned a lot from the native devs as well. So that helped us like fast track how people learned React Native.
When you said the React Native portion of the training, did it go all the way down to the native pieces, like how to build a native view, a native module?
Yes, but initially we defaulted to building everything in React Native and then pulling back, and because we were making this big shift. But at the end of the day, yes, 100% React Native is an anti-goal for us. So we encourage teams to use React Native for what's best for, and then native for other things.
That's really cool. Is that anything you would ever like sell as a course or like make public in any way? Because there's like, I always hear from the community how few like React Native training resources there are in the world. And people are always desperate for like really good React Native training resources. Is that something you guys would ever like sell? Or is it more like this is like Shopify's secret sauce?
I don't know. I think like, we could. We'll have to think about it more, but a very small part of that is Shopify specific. Like I was mentioning, the last section of the course is Shopify specific, but it's nothing like extraordinary. It's like we basically took many of things that were already available and just packaged them nicely, and then made it available to everybody internally.
That would be a good product if you could.
It would
market it.
You would have a lot of interest in it.
Yes.
And you'd have no idea how many people ask. A lot of times they'll ask us if we do training, which we do a little bit, but like our time is limited. But so many people are just desperate for like really, really good React Native training resources in one spot, because there's like YouTube videos here and then like a blog over here, and you can kind of piece it all together. But like end-to-end React Native training, it's hard to come by. So think about that.
Cool. Yeah, I will. And if anybody listening is interested, let us know.
Let's talk about performance. Performance is everyone's like favorite topic, right? And this is a large application. You mentioned how many screens? Was it 800?
Over 800.
Well, and it's everyone's favorite topic. And it's also a lot of times what people point to say React Native is not as good as
exactly.
native.
So over 800 screens. This is not a small to-do list app kind of thing. What was because I think in the article you mentioned there was like some performance achievements you achieved post-migration. Can you elaborate on what those were and how did you measure those metrics?
Yeah, so performance was a big area of focus for us, and also the reason why we did not adopt React Native sooner. React Native performance wasn't great in the past, and we saw things getting better, especially like we did a lot of prototyping early on to see like what kind of performance we can get out of React Native, and we anticipated it to get better back in 2020, and it did. In the Shopify mobile app in particular, when we started migrating, we set very clear goals for ourselves that we want to hit. Our goal was to load every critical screen in the app in 500 milliseconds or less. And we wanted the app launch to happen in less than 2 seconds. So this is time to interactive.
Yeah.
And anybody who's done mobile like knows that these are ambitious numbers even for native apps.
It's like that's a pretty high bar.
Yeah, and we focused on it from day one. This is true for any technology or framework, but a lot of times teams ship a whole bunch of code and then realize that performance isn't great, and then going back and fixing it is a lot of work, and in some cases not even possible without a giant refactor or rewrite. So that's why we didn't want to do that. We wanted to just focus it from the start. And yes, we were able to achieve these goals. So once we finish the rewrite, the screen loads are about 59% faster now. App launches are 44% faster. We also made our web views 63% faster. But the main takeaway here is that native automatically doesn't mean fast.
Yeah.
React Native automatically doesn't mean slow. It is possible now to build really fast apps with React Native. And if you focus it on from the start, we shared pretty much all our learnings in the blog post that Mazen was talking about.
It's a great article. Well, we'll make sure we link it in the show notes.
Yeah.
It's a really great article.
Yeah, if you build things the right way, you can achieve really good performance with React Native. And once you achieve that, you also have to hold on to it because it's very easy to regress. So we have a lot of automated tooling set up that will catch regressions.
Mustafa, if you don't mind, I'm going to quote you on that. Native doesn't always mean fast. React Native doesn't always mean slow. Thank you for saying that out loud and publicly.
I think didn't we have a Chain React talk about that?
Well, that sounds
I feel
familiar.
like one of our Chain React speakers actually demoed how you can how easy it is to build really slow, janky native code.
Yes. Yeah, I remember what you're talking about. Yeah. It's very true. Like if you focus on it from the beginning, you can get to those goals. And the fact that you're able, you were talking about 50+% improvement using React Native. If you were to tell anyone, any large organization that has a native app, hey, let's go to React Native, their first thing is going to be like, React Native is slow. This is not going to cut it for our customers. But at the same time, you're saying you're achieving 50+%. We did the Mercari rewrite, and in Naoya's blog article, you'll see similar numbers to TTI for Android and iOS. That just goes to show that, yes, native does not always mean fast. React Native does not always mean slow. Absolutely.
Yeah. Performance is so critical, and I think a lot of React Native engineers don't think about it the first time they build their app. Because, I don't think there's enough, information and documentation and stuff about how to build a performant app from the start. A lot of times it's kind of an afterthought. So helping people learn how to do that performance from the start is so helpful.
There are some cultural aspects to this as well. A lot of mobile devs use an iPhone, the latest and greatest, and of course their app works well on those devices, right? One of the things we did was we basically purchased mid-end Android phones for the entire team and just made them test it, make them...
You have to make it mandatory too because it's so painful.
It wasn't difficult to get it adopted. It's just that people did not have access to those devices. So we just it was a small price to pay in the grand scheme of things because that made our app so much better. Yeah,
it's so true. And it's so easy to not do that. But honestly, so much of the world is on Android and we forget that. And so, having a slow Android test device that should be your first, you build something and you test it on that device first, and that can really help you. Let's talk about stability. So for an app like Shopify, which is used by so many people, I'm sure it's really critical to have like stability and have it not crash on users. Did you find that your stability changed with the migration? Were there any strategies that you used to either maintain app stability or improve it throughout your migration?
Yeah, stability remained consistent throughout the migration. We have 99.9% crash-free sessions in the app, and we basically completely overhauled the app, and maintaining that at our scale was a challenge. So we did a lot of things to achieve this. First one was anytime we migrated a feature, we put it behind a server-side feature flag and then gradually rolled it out. So that in case we missed any issues, we could remotely switch back to the native version and then fix it without having to go do an app update and go through Apple and Google to be able to do that. That was a big one. We don't have a QA team at Shopify, so we rely very heavily on automated testing. So we spend a lot of time writing automated tests, and we do some manual testing as well. Anytime a new feature was built or migrated to React Native, it's first tested with internal users. A lot of Shopify employees also run their own businesses, so we have a lot of internal users as well.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So yeah, we were able to test a bunch of changes with them, then gradually roll it out behind a server-side feature flag. We also invested a lot in automated monitoring. So we measure how things are going in production. And when anything goes wrong or is about to go wrong, we get automated alerts so we can go in and investigate and fix them.
So it sounds like your strategy to do brownfield and like incrementally convert your app was really critical to that. Because in order to do the server-side feature flagging, you had that only worked because you were able to just swap back and forth between the React Native version and the native version because it was a brownfield app. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, you mentioned you don't have a QA team and you used automated testing. What did you use for automated testing?
We use Jest.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And we have our own framework to do screenshot testing.
Okay.
We call it Testify. And it basically compares two versions of the UI. So we use that extensively as well.
I see what you did with the name. Shopify, Testify.
Justify. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I like
so
that.
You didn't have anything like Detox or
Maestro.
Appium or Maestro or any of those end-to-end frameworks?
We do some amount of end-to-end testing as well. We currently use Appium.
Okay.
And we are constantly looking at more tools.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about any other open source tools that you ended up either developing for the community as part of this initiative? I know Flashlist came out of Shopify specifically.
We did a whole episode with Talha about Flashlist.
Yeah, so we are big fans of open source at Shopify. We don't want to just consume open source software. We also want to contribute back. We do a lot of open source work, especially on the backend side with Ruby and Rails. We do like to do more things on mobile as well. When it comes to open source, the way that we approach it is if there are people who are already solving a problem that we've run into and they're doing it well, we want to help them. So things like React Native Skia or Reanimated, for instance, those teams are doing really good work, so we support them. For things that aren't being solved as well or nobody's solving them, we decide to help solve that. Flashlist came about that way as well. Lists in React Native were slow and janky for years, so we thought, let's take a stab at fixing them.
Yeah.
And we built Flashlist internally. We tested it in all our apps. It worked well, and then we made it available as open source project. Top Hat was similar. Top Hat has nothing to do with React Native, to be honest. You can use it with native apps as well. But we ran into a problem where it was very difficult for people to access internal builds, especially if you're a developer, you have to save your work, switch a branch, then compile, and it just takes forever. So we built it for internal use. People really liked it. I think somebody mentioned it at a conference, and then we got a lot of interest. So we then decided to open source it.
For listeners that aren't familiar, can you just give us a quick elevator TLDR on what is Top Hat?
So Top Hat is a Mac OS tool that allows you to install internal builds with one click. So it works with your existing CI infrastructure, and it basically downloads and install builds on any emulator, simulator, or a real device that's connected to your computer. So a common use case is you're working in your branch, but then you have to review somebody else's code on a different branch. Normally, you'd have to pause your work, switch to a different branch, pull the changes, compile it, run it, and all that. With Top Hat, you just have to click a button, and that particular build, it's already exists in your CI. So we just pull it from there and deploy it on whatever target you want.
So are they, is it any particular service that you use for those internal builds, or is it just like IPA 80, like APKs?
It works with your CI infrastructure. So if you're using GitHub or anything else, you can just connect it to that and just downloads the files and deploys them.
That's cool. It's similar to Expo Orbit, I think is the one they call it.
Okay, yeah.
That one just pulls directly from your EAS infrastructure.
Orbit was inspired by Top Hat, actually.
What?
There you go.
That's a fun fact.
Today I learned, yeah.
That's cool.
I think another topic that I kind of want to touch on real quick is state management.
Oh, yeah.
From the article, you all built your own state management framework, it sounds like. Can you tell us, why you built your own state management framework instead of using something that's already existent out there? And, what was the benefit from doing that?
Yeah, the main reason for that is because for the Shopify mobile app in particular, we had multiple React contexts, and most libraries assume that application state can live in a top-level provider component, and that wasn't the case for the Shopify mobile app. So we had something internally that supported that. So we extended that and made it available for the Shopify app. It works really well, and we like it. And so there's not a really strong reason for us to use anything else right now.
Okay. Will it be open source?
So you won't be able to weigh in on the Redux versus everything else?
Some of our other apps use Redux, actually. And yeah, we constantly reevaluate what we're using in our tech stack, and maybe it will change in the future. I don't know. We'll have to see.
State management is so individual to every app and its needs. It's hard for there to be a one size fits all. So rolling your own, if you have the resources to do that, is a really cool solution.
And also, with our we have hundreds and hundreds of screens. So what works for this app may not work, right?
Exactly.
Unfortunately, we are pretty much out of time. To end things, I have to ask what the future holds for React Native development at Shopify, and what's next for the app. Do you have the new architecture turned on yet? What's the future look like?
Yeah, in general, we are very happy with React Native at Shopify. I think it has given us a step change in productivity. Just by not building the same features twice is a huge unlock for us. We are very excited about the changes that are coming in React Native, especially the new architecture. We are looking at adopting it on all our apps right now. And yeah, the community is thriving, and we are looking forward to working with Meta and the community to make React Native better.
I love it. We are so happy that the React Native community has an advocate like Shopify, because it makes such a huge difference. Having a big company that's put so much behind this technology and this framework, it helps it succeed for the whole community. We appreciate it, and we really appreciated talking to you today. Where can people find you online if they want to hit you up?
I'm on X. I'm pretty active there. So Mustafa01 Ali on X or Twitter.
Perfect. We'll put that in the Twitter. Everyone still calls it Twitter. Let's be real. Of course, Mazen is at Mazen Chami, and I'm at Robin Hines with no underscore anymore. And then React Native Radio, the show is React Native RDIO on Twitter, X, and also Blue Sky, I believe.
I believe so too. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mustafa, for joining us. It was a pleasure. I will send you all out with a mom joke, because I know you all have been missing it since I haven't been on the last few episodes. This is a really special one. This is from our editor, Jed Bartoski's 5-year-old daughter, Gemma. And it's amazing. What is a snowman's favorite kind of frosting? Icing.
That's a good one.
It's so good. You should tell Gemma that her joke made it onto the podcast. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
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 As always, thanks to our editor, Todd Worth, our assistant editor, Jed Bartoski, our marketing and episode release coordinator, Justin Husky, and our guest coordinator, Mazen Chami. Our producers and hosts are Jamin Holmgren, Robin Hines, and Mazen Chami. Thanks to our sponsor, Infinite Red. Check us out at infinite.red/radio. A special thanks to all of you listening today. Make sure to subscribe to React Native Radio on all the major podcasting platforms.